Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's town hall meeting. I'm Andrew Schiff, CEO of the Rhode Island Community Food Bank. Before we get started, I just want to mention that Spanish translation is available for today's town hall. If you'd like to listen in Spanish, click on the interpretation icon. It looks like a globe, and select Spanish. Today, the Food Bank is releasing our 2023 status report on hunger in Rhode Island. I'll discuss the report's findings, and then you'll be hearing from our three guests. Rilwan Feshetan, President and CEO of EBCAP, the East Bay Community Action Program. You'll also be hearing from State Senator Sandra Cano and Representative Justine Caldwell. Both Senator Cano and Representative Caldwell will share their support for one of the recommendations in our report, making school lunch and school breakfast free for all students in Rhode Island. I should mention that Senator Cano has another commitment this morning, so she's going to try to join us pretty much halfway through the town hall. There will also be time for questions from the audience. So please type your questions in the Q&A box. The Q&A icon is at the bottom of your screen. And we'll save time to answer all of your questions after we hear from our guest speakers. The Food Bank issues this status report on hunger each year as both a report card on our efforts to reduce food insecurity and end hunger in Rhode Island, and as a call to action with recommendations for how we can solve the problem of hunger with policy change at the local, state, and federal levels. In 2023, low-income families in Rhode Island faced many challenges. They lost critical resources, programs, and benefits that were available during the pandemic. And they experienced continued inflation in basic expenses, including rent, utilities, and food. During the pandemic, Congress approved emergency SNAP benefits. SNAP is a supplemental nutrition assistance program. And that emergency allocation ended in March 2023. The emergency allocation had enabled 88,000 Rhode Island households enrolled in SNAP to purchase additional food each month during the pandemic. When these extra SNAP benefits ended in March 2023, SNAP benefits decreased by a huge amount, down 31%. For the state as a whole, SNAP benefits went down by $13 million per month. For each household on average, benefits went down by $155 per month, enough to purchase a week's worth of groceries. In the month that SNAP benefits were cut, we witnessed a dramatic sudden increase in the number of people seeking assistance at food pantries. It was a 20% increase in 1 month, from 66,000 people served to 79,000 people served. Of great concern, the high demand continued each month in 2023 after March. Here you see that the high demand continued in April, and the trend since March has been demand is continuing to go up. In June 2023, to help the food bank acquire enough food to keep up with the high demand, the Rhode Island General Assembly and the governor approved a one-time allocation of $3 million in ARPA funds for the food bank. ARPA is the Federal American Rescue Plan Act. But realistically, There's no way the food bank can make up for the loss of $13 million in SNAP benefits each month, or $156 million per year. $156 million per year is 10 times the operating budget of the food bank. We need Congress to increase SNAP benefits to keep pace with the real cost of food. This year, Congress will approve a new farm bill, which includes SNAP. The farm bill only comes up for approval every 5 years. This is the chance to increase SNAP benefit levels. At the state level, we're also urging the governor and General Assembly to increase the annual allocation for the food bank to $1 million. With so many people seeking food assistance, we need more state support to ensure that we have the supply of food necessary to keep the shelves of food pantries full across the state. Another critical program that was available during the pandemic that's now ended is free school meals. We show in our report that participation in school lunch and school breakfast dropped when school meals were no longer free for all students. School lunch participation dropped by 15%. School breakfast participation went down by almost 30%. By comparison, Massachusetts made school meals free for all students even after the federal program ended, and participation in lunch and breakfast went up in Massachusetts schools last year rather than down as it did in Rhode Island. The food bank is part of a coalition of nonprofits and the teachers union advocating for free school meals for all students. 8 other states have made free school meals a permanent policy: Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, California, Colorado, Michigan, Minnesota, and New Mexico. We can do it too. In the status report, we show that in Rhode Island today, nearly 1 household out of every 3 is food insecure, meaning that they regularly cannot afford adequate food. That's the finding from the Rhode Island Life Index, an initiative of Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Rhode Island and the Brown University School of Public Health. As shocking as it is to see that nearly 1 in 3 Rhode Islanders is food insecure, the rate is even higher in communities of color. Among Black, Latino, Asian American, and Native American households, the level of food insecurity is above 40%, significantly higher than the rate for white households. Communities of color have not recovered from the severe impact of the pandemic, which exacerbated long-standing inequities in health and wealth. The rate of food insecurity is also higher for families with children, 38%. Families with children are not only struggling to afford adequate food, they're also finding it more and more difficult to pay the rent, pay the utility bill, and pay for medical expenses. It's time for Congress to reinstate the expanded child tax credit that was so effective during the pandemic at reducing child poverty and child hunger. In Rhode Island, community action programs are a critical resource for families struggling to make ends meet. And I'd like to invite Rilwan to join us now. As I said before, Rilwan is President and CEO of the East Bay Community Action Program. He's also Vice President of our Board of Directors here at the Food Bank. Welcome, Rilwan.
Good morning, Andrew. Let's try that again. Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm glad to be here and glad to share a few words with those that are gathered here for our town hall today. Andrew, as you know, I had the opportunity to lead a large nonprofit in Providence for over a decade. So it was really easy for me to see poverty every day when I was operating one of the largest food pantries in the city of Providence, and as part of the services that we were providing there. I also got to see firsthand the impact of poverty and food insecurity on neighboring communities like Pawtucket and Central Falls, along with Providence that see the highest poverty index in the state. Really easy to see it when those communities are struggling and have folks that have great needs. But what many of the folks gathered today on our town hall may not know is poverty and food insecurity is a statewide issue. There are pockets of poverty in all 39 cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island. As president and CEO of East Bay Community Action Program, I see the findings of our 2023 state report on hunger to hold true for the 10 communities we serve in the upper and lower East Bay. EBCAP has the privilege of serving communities from East Providence all the way to Newport and Tiverton. Many of those communities are considered affluent, but we see the same levels of food insecurity and needs in those communities as we see in our urban cores in the cities that have the highest poverty index. Newport, as an example, is known for our great tourism in the state. The Bellevue Avenue mansions, the America's Cup regalas, and our jazz festivals and folk festivals, among many other of the great attractions that bring people to our communities. But as the report shows, 1 in 3 folks in Rhode Island are food insecure. Every one of those communities, the upper and lower East Bay, as throughout our state, have folks that are struggling through economic downturn, through the recovery of COVID, dealing with how to make ends meet every single day. So as we look at the work and what the report shares is there is no one that's immune from the struggles of poverty or the struggles of trying to figure out how to put food on the table to take care of their families. So I'm not lost in thinking like many of us that will be celebrating Thanksgiving or the holidays the weeks to come. Think about as we break bread with our neighbors, with our loved ones, and the people that we care about. As you look across those tables, think about 1 in 3 of those people when they leave will leave and be food insecure. While we think about the bounty of the meals that we eat and we enjoy, 1 in 3 of those folks on average will struggle to figure out how to pay or how to figure out how to feed folks through school breaks, through everyday means of trying to survive in Rhode Island. That is a Rhode Island struggle. It's a statewide, it's a regional struggle, but it's our struggle. So collectively, we think and we ponder about what we do and how we react to the work that's ahead of us. I had the opportunity yesterday in preparation for this meeting to go down to our food bank in our East Providence location in Riverside. And I honestly, anecdotally, by 2 o'clock when I went down there, saw more people in our waiting area than I had ever seen in our building. I didn't take the time to ask our staff how many people they had seen for that day, as we still had several more hours of service that day and wanted them to do the good work that they were doing. But I eyeballed more people than I had ever seen in that space the week before Thanksgiving. Was it because of the holiday or was it because of the increased needs that we still continue to see? What I can tell you statistically is, as an organization, over the last few months, we've increased our capacity to serve people by 40%. We are seeing 40% more people than we did at any other point during this year. This was possible through the support of the food bank, as we're one of the member agencies that Andrew spoke about. We also are fortunate to have great private donors and benefactors that are supporting some of the work that we're doing in those upper and lower 10 communities that we support. And we're fortunate and blessed as an agency to provide through our board support additional resources to provide for those Rhode Islanders that are most in need in our communities. Our resource recovery center is one of the programs I'm really proud of. They work with our folks in our addiction communities that are struggling to get back on their feet. And that program, and through the work of that staff and many in recovery themselves, have monthly a mobile food pantry that they get out onto the streets to meet people where they are. So it's not just the folks coming in to our brick and mortar food pantries, but at EBCAP, we have a mobile pantry that our recovery center operates, volunteers, staff, and gets on the road to meet people where they are when they're most in need. I mentioned a moment ago that we're in some of the largest areas of need throughout the state. Tiverton is our smallest food pantry in the EBCAP network of pantries that we have as a member agency with the food bank, but it's one of our most proud and one of our biggest serving. When I was there last month, I had an opportunity to see 3 veterans that were coming through. We generally are able to service folks twice a month, and these veterans in particular had come back each week. And so I took time to sit with them and ask them what their situation was, what were they going through. And they very honestly and very candidly just said that they're glad that they, even though they're veterans and have services that are provided many times in Providence and other communities, but they were really fortunate and felt blessed that they had a pantry in their own community in Tiverton to be able to serve their needs and to be able to do it with dignity, compassion, and with respect. That meant the world to me to hear that as a CEO, that we're meeting their needs and meeting the expectations of that community that many folks don't know or maybe have driven through on their way to Newport. One of the things that we know is we are a helping organization, and we're folks that serve folks that need the help. I was honored to be able to get a donation from an organization across the border in Massachusetts that is supporting that Tiverton food pantry in addition to the other work that we're doing, because that location also gets folks that cross over the border from Massachusetts because our pantry is closer to them than some of the other service support systems in Massachusetts. So we get people coming over from Fall River and other areas in Massachusetts. We don't turn them away. We open and extend our arms to even our neighbors there. And a nonprofit there recognized that and also want to contribute to the work that's happening on this side of the border in Rhode Island, because we're taking care of those in the Commonwealth and our neighbors in the Bay State. Our example is not a unique one. We've got member agencies across the state that are doing amazing work. I'm privileged on the board to not only be the vice president and share my talents and my treasures with the food bank, but also to staff our member agency committee. So I get to see firsthand the work that's happening across the state, and it makes me proud. As a volunteer food bank member, board member, it's where I give my time and my talents to be able to help fellow Rhode Islanders and do the work that's so important. And in the case of EBCAP, is increasing by 40%, even in the recovery phase of the pandemic. So Andrew, I thank you and the staff for the work that you've done on the report, for all those that were a part of it. And we really bear witness to the fact that the work is continuing. It's getting more difficult as resources are diminishing. And we're glad that we can be here to partner and work with the food bank and all our member agencies to make sure that Rhode Islanders don't go hungry in really difficult times. I look forward to hearing our fellow speakers, our elected officials that are part of working to make sure Rhode Islanders are taken care of. And I thank you and give this time back over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Wilwan. You know, obviously we are so lucky that EBCAP is there and able to serve so many families in need in the community this week and every week in the year. Our next 2 guests were champions for free school meals for all students in the last legislative session, and I'm sure they'll continue to be champions in the coming year. First, please welcome Senator Sandra Cano. Welcome, Senator. I just want to start by thanking you for your incredible leadership in the Senate in promoting free school meals for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And also thank you to Wilwan. I do believe that together we can not only bring more awareness, but we should do the work and make this policy happen. Buenos dias. My name is Sandra Cano, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank the Rhode Island Food Bank and the entire coalition for your advocacy and for bringing awareness about all of these policies that should be our #1 priority in the next legislative year. Healthy meals for all the students certainly has been a priority of mine for quite some time, ever since I got elected into the Senate in 2018. As we are aware, food insecurity is at an all-time high in Rhode Island. And we know that nearly 1 in 3 households in our state struggle to afford adequate food. Higher in community of colors, like around 40%. And this morning I was reading the report, and it was noted that 38% of households with at least 1 child younger than the age of 18 reported that they cannot afford food, as they did 48% of Black households and 51% of Latino households. This certainly is more than a hunger issue. This is an equity issue. We saw a healthy school meals for all policy in action during the COVID pandemic, when federal funding was provided from the USDA to offer meals free of charge to all students. With federal waivers expire, Rhode Island has the opportunity to ensure our children are hunger-free and ready to learn. It's not a secret, but research have shown that empty bellies are a barrier to learning for children and youth, and school meals play a critical role in student health and academic success. We can improve learning, eliminate school meal debt and shame, and foster improved quality in school meal programs by making healthy school meals for all permanent in every Rhode Island school district. Our current policy for school meals, whether some children are expected to pay while others receive their meals for free, create a stigma and shame for students that rely on school meals for their basic needs, and serves as a barrier for those students who are not eligible but are still experiencing food insecurity. By the way, students were the #1 advocates of this policy in last year's session. I was very encouraged to see the students and speaking on behalf of this policy and being so passionate about passing this legislation. Food shaming disproportionately affects marginal families and goes beyond just hurting students' self-esteem. Missing meals hinders, like I said, children development and success. And for many low-income students, food provided at school might be their only meal of the day. Can we imagine the only meal of the day? So we need to make sure that we do this policy this next legislation session. Like I said, it's an equity issue. In my own district in Pawtucket, food insecurity is a huge issue. With escalating rents, the impact of inflation on groceries, and the cost of medical care, it does not leave a lot of choices on a limited income. For many of our families, the choice is to pay the rent so they don't become homeless, and many can meet that need in itself. Never mind putting food on the table. So healthy school meals for all would ensure that all the students across the state of Rhode Island would have available to them a healthy breakfast and lunch. No reason why we shouldn't join the other 8 states that had already passed this policy. The Senate passed this legislation last year with bipartisan support, and I really look forward to continue our work together. And I want to give a shout out to Representative Caldwell for being my partner in the House. Let's just make sure we get to work. And again, together, let's pass healthy meals for all students in 2024. Gracias, and I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving, and let's be grateful for this great coalition that is advocating for the most in need in our state. Muchas gracias, Andrew, and thank you for all being here.
Thank you so much, Senator. It's such an important point that allowing food insecurity at the rate that it is, 38% families with children, really is undermining our investment in education and health. And by bringing free school meals to all students, we're investing again in education, in achievement, and in children's health. It is an equity issue. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Representative Justine Caldwell. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Representative Caldwell.
Hi, thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, all the food bank, to be a panelist here today. I am Justine Caldwell, the state rep from East and West Greenwich, and the sponsor of the bill in the House to provide universal school meals to all students. I also want to say thank you to Rhode and my friend and partner, Senator Cano, for being here today and all of their hard work on this issue. It's really a privilege for me to be with all of you here today who do the necessary and hard work every single day to make sure that Rhode Island families aren't hungry, and of course, in our partnership together to bring universal school meals to all Rhode Island students. As a mother of school-age children myself, I see every day the importance of nutritious food in a successful school day. This is the time of year when we're really focused on abundance. So many of us are planning our giant turkeys, our table full of Thanksgiving pies, when the reality tells us that in Rhode Island, especially in a family like mine and a family like Senator Cano's, a family of 4 with 2 young children, that we are really the lucky ones, that there are so many, that there are too many families with children who can't afford to put food on their tables for dinner, never mind food for their students during the school day. The reality is that too many Rhode Island children are hungry, but it is well within our power to change that by making sure every single student, everyone, can access free breakfast and lunch at school. Because during the pandemic, the federal government provided free meals to all students, we have data that tells us how integral these meals are to students. We know that when Rhode Island stopped offering free meals, school lunch participation decreased by 15%, and school breakfast participation decreased by 27%. 27%. My heart skipped a beat when I saw that statistic. It was so difficult and heartbreaking to imagine the kids who now start the school day without breakfast. Meanwhile, our neighbors in Massachusetts extended their free meals program post-COVID. And of course, what happened is that more students access breakfast and lunch. So this tells us everything we need to know, that there are children in our schools who are hungry, who need these meals and cannot access them due to cost, due to stigma, due to administrative burdens, for a laundry list of reasons. This tells us that the demand for these school meals is elastic, that cost acts as a barrier in helping kids become fed and ready to learn. In a year where we're so focused on student absenteeism, we also know that providing meals to students is a big incentive, both for them and their families, to get them to school. Kids can't sit still. They can't learn hard things. They can't control their emotions. They can't do any of the things they need to do to thrive at school on an empty stomach. So what can you do? As you can imagine, the main barrier to providing these meals is the big price tag. And so our goal has to first be a line item in our next budget. In Rhode Island, our budget process officially begins when our Governor Dan McKee presents his budget to the General Assembly in mid to late January. Then over the course of several months, we'll hold hearings in the House and Senate to debate the merit, to debate the finances for a final budget in June. But because of the importance and the price tag of this bill, that Senator Cano and I are going to, fight tooth and nail to get over the finish line in that budget in June, we really need a line item for universal school meals in the January budget presented by Governor McKee. And so over the next few weeks, as many folks have mentioned already, the next few weeks that are very busy for us focused on food and family and gifts and generosity and gratitude. I know they're very busy weeks, but these are the weeks we need to be reaching out to the governor's office by phone or by email and just making this request of him that he include a line item for the universal school meals in his budget in January. This will be an essential jumping off point for the House and the Senate as we talk about our priorities and negotiate this budget. The Speaker of the House has already noted that this is one of his priorities this session. And last year, we were very lucky with Senator Cano's advocacy that we did get a bill across the finish line in the Senate. So this is within our grasp this year. And we really want to get it done. And the first goal is going to be to make sure we have a line item in the budget in January. And, with that, I again want to say thank you. I want to let everyone know they can reach out to me at any time with any questions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions in the Q&A at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Caldwell. Thank you for your amazing leadership. Now, it's time for questions from the audience. I'm happy to introduce our Chief Philanthropy Officer, Lisa Roth-Blackman. Lisa has been collecting your questions and she's ready to pose them to us. And so I invite Representative Caldwell, Senator Cano, and Rilwan to come back on screen and we'll answer the questions.
Okay, terrific. Hello, everybody. I think before we dive into the questions about healthy school meals and the bill and how we get it passed, there's a couple of questions that have come up about the food insecurity data. So the one question about what's the median income of those involved in the poll or the survey, and you know, there's also a question about whether there's data for all 39 cities and towns. So Andrew, I wonder if you can just speak a little bit to how that data is collected and what we have and what we don't have.
Sure. This is part of the Rhode Island Life Index that's conducted by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Rhode Island and the Brown University School of Public Health. And so it's a random sample of over 2,000 households that not only agreed to talk to the person doing the survey, but answer about 20 minutes of questions. So they're good people who are taking the time to answer all the questions in the Rhode Island Life Index. And so it's a broad sample of, it includes high income, middle income, and low income families, just like any random sample of Rhode Islanders would. And the survey asks about a lot of perceptions that Rhode Islanders have about their communities, and also asks them about their own situation in terms of housing and health and food security. So that's where the numbers come from. We're very grateful to the folks at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Rhode Island for sponsoring this important survey. And they're going to be releasing the entire survey next week, next Wednesday.
Great, thank you. All right, so we do have a bunch of questions about healthy school meals. And maybe what we need to start with, and Representative Caldwell, I think I'll throw this one to you, is because you spoke a little bit about getting the line item in the budget, the governor's budget. There is a specific question about the price tag, and a question about how we might fund it this year going forward.
Great. Yes, thank you. So the price tag for the Healthy School Meals for All is, I would say, hovers around $38 to $40 million. That can be funded in a lot of different ways. One of the ways we can, kind of reduce the need for the state to pay that is to make sure that every city and town and school district is leveraging all the grants that they can access through the federal government, through any kind of farm to table programs that are out there in the community or the federal government. That would be one way. And because we know that the more folks participate, the more reimbursements we get back, actually a higher participation level reduces the overall cost for the meals. So we would be looking at a line item for the state to make up the difference between the reimbursements we get from the federal government and any kind of grant programs that the school districts can provide.
Thank you. We have a question about, Andrew, you spoke a little bit about the decrease in breakfast once they ended the free school meals for all. I wonder if Senator Cano or Rep. Caldwell, you can speak to a question about, was the decrease due at all to the increase in absenteeism?
So that's a good question. I do believe that absenteeism is an issue, and obviously some students feel stigmatized that there was a way where they, when they don't get equity with all the students, when they don't get breakfast all at once, and when they are picked out of a group, they don't feel like they don't feel comfortable. They feel their self-esteem goes down. So some of the research show that when there is not breakfast for all, and when we take away these programs, like students decrease on participating because they don't want to be pointed out by other students. They don't want to feel uncomfortable. Or sometimes they just don't go to school because they feel that pressure from their peers. And so it is really, really critical that we take that pressure out of the students and we pass legislation that creates equity for all students, and that they are able to feel comfortable because everyone is receiving the same treatment. So I do believe absenteeism also goes along with food insecurity and also with housing security. We've been looking at all of these social emotional factors really goes together. So the answer is yes. I think they go hand in hand. And I think Rep. Caldwell, you can add in anything else that you think about this.
Sure. Thank you, Senator. I agree with your point in your remarks that the students were really at the heart and the center of this fight last year. And your remarks about, them not wanting to come due to the stigma and breakfast, I think are spot on. If we imagine ourselves at the various breakfasts we've all been together, right, in person at an advocacy event for something, if we knew before we got there that when we walked in, they were going to say, oh, Justine, come here. You are in the bottom 10% of earners in this room. So we're going to bring you over here to get this breakfast for free. Because you're one of the poorest people here. That would probably mean that I wasn't going to feel super comfortable at that breakfast, and we would all be appalled if something like that happened in a group of adults. So I definitely agree that these students, we need to listen to these students' stories. We need to believe the stories and the feelings that they tell us and move on from there.
And I would just add that in our report, we show the decrease in Rhode Island from, and Representative Caldwell, you mentioned it, that from when the meals were free for all students through the federal program during the pandemic, and that ended in June 2022, so last school year, there was this drop. I think it's just important for everybody to remember that that's average daily participation. That's every single school day. Thousands of kids are not getting breakfast. Thousands of kids are not getting lunch. And it really adds up over the year, and in terms of any individual child, it affects their ability to learn, it affects their health. We can make a huge difference. And we have all the data we need because we know how much better things were when the federal program was in place. And we also know how much better things are in our neighbor, Massachusetts, that's continued this program and made it actually a permanent state policy.
Great. So there's a couple of questions, and I think, Andrew, I'm going to let you start here, and then maybe Senator Lozano and then Rep. Caldwell can jump in. There's a question about whether there's a petition parents can sign, but I think generally people are looking to know what can they do to help get this passed, and I think there's probably an arc of things, starting with contacting the governor's office to try to get in the budget. But Andrew, I'm going to let you jump in and talk a little bit about that and what we'll see going forward here.
I know it always makes people a little nervous to get in touch with their state representative, state senator, and the governor's office, but this is really an important time to do it. If you go to the food bank's website, rifoodbank.org, and click on Advocate for Change, we have all the information to make it easy for you to contact your legislators. And it will make a real difference. And as Senator Kano was saying, contacting the governor right now will make a tremendous difference in our trying to get this into the governor's budget. So that's the call to action for our audience today.
I think time is critical. As we probably heard by Representative Caldwell, this is the time that the governor's office is putting together the budget. So we cannot wait until January. January is when he releases it to the General Assembly. right now is when all of the directors are gathering information and requesting the governor to put their priorities. So I think this is the time where our administration needs to hear that this is a priority, that we need to do something about it as soon as possible. And like then the General Assembly would have a starting point. So Representative Caldwell and I, with all our colleagues, will be able to then advocate for more funding in the budget to make sure that we find avenues to get it across the finish line. But another thing that I like to add in is that I think that I agree with Real One was saying that there is a lot of misconceptions about this type of policy, that it would only go to marginalized communities, or that it would only affect the all, like, low income minority communities. While that is true, it does affect those communities. There is communities such as Newport that honestly have a lot of need. And I think that it's important that parents and people engaged from those communities that also see the need talk to the representatives, because sometimes, while they understand that there is a need in their communities, it's important for them to hear firsthand from their constituents. So make sure you reach out to the General Assembly members as well.
Okay. So there's another question about, can we provide data? Is there a way to show the free breakfast and lunch raise test scores or decrease absenteeism or increase graduation percentages? I think there have been some studies on this. Senator Cano or Rep. Caldwell, one of you probably, I think, has your finger on that pulse the best.
I can start, sure. We've heard a lot about things like that. One of the greatest studies that I've seen has shown that the free universal meals really decreases disciplinary actions that teachers and students actually have to have at school. We know that after lunchtime is when most kids, have a disciplinary or a behavioral issue at school, possibly because they haven't eaten breakfast and lunch, and that makes it harder for them. So we know that one major thing that provides, that the food provides, is the ability for teachers and students to focus on learning. Certainly, I can find data about the food getting children to school. I think we learned that over COVID. I think there were, more kids going to school because they had free breakfast and lunch. And I think we have a lot of that data from our working group that certainly we could kind of help pull together and provide for people. Certainly we'll be doing that around the time for the hearing, to come together and make sure that the public is well informed about the issue.
And also to add, I think that we have a great resource in our state with the Rhode Island Kids Count. They have a fat book that really tackle on some data with communities and also all of these factors, just like Andrew was saying, the SNAP program and all of the factors that really get them to have food insecurity. And then so we can really gather that information and shape it into a good way to show that data and proving a case that this is needed yesterday, and we are so overdue in passing this policy.
I'd like to add to it as well. I had an opportunity when in Providence to partner with one of the largest high schools there to be able to put in equipment into those spaces to make sure kids had that food. And it makes a world of difference. So beyond just being anecdotal, you talk to any building administrator that has access to food, and they will tell you it makes a world of difference for those students in their schools. From a personal note, I had the opportunity to serve as a vice president of a charter school. We made it an emphasis as a board to make sure that meals were required for every student, regardless of income. It made a world of difference. So we're not just talking about the data paralysis of it or the anecdotal return on investment. If you are an educator or an administrator in a school where free lunch is available or breakfast, you know the difference in the participation, the involvement of your students and their ability to come to school well-fed. And it decreases the behavioral issues, it decreases the issues to deal with the outside distractions of having a hungry belly while you're in the middle of a test or an exam. So we can tell you firsthand that it makes a difference.
So another question or two around school meals. There's a question about whether do we know what the governor's position is. I know we're asking people to reach out, and I do want to mention the contact info on our website is in the chat, and Stephanie Geller from Kids Count also dropped their link to the fact book, I believe, into the chat she gave us, so we could put that there. So there is lots of data there for linking. But Rep. Caldwell or Senator Cano, are we able to speak to where we think the governor is on this?
I can. I've met with the governor's office several times, as I'm sure Senator Cano has as well. You know, the governor is, of course, you know, an educator. His wife's a lifelong educator, knows how important good education is for students. So he's open to this idea, but, you know, I remind everyone outside that we have 75 reps and 38 senators, and every single one of those reps and senators has a different way that they would like to spend $40 million. And they are advocating their leadership, and they are advocating to the governor's office. And that means there's a lot of decisions, you know, that have to be made. And that's why good policy like this that should have been done yesterday, that's really righting a wrong, right? We give free technology to students, but we're not giving free meals to students, right? That we shouldn't be in this situation. But, you know, a lot of decisions have to be made. And that's why such a robust outreach is really necessary to the reps and senators so that they can pass it on to the governor's office and our leadership. I mean, I think he's very open to it. But again, this is the time, as Senator Cano said, where hard decisions are being made. Difficult decisions are being made, and people are going to be left disappointed and hungry and unhoused and, you know, all of those different things. And so that's why such a robust outreach, I think, is really critical.
Thank you. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and real one, I think this is a question that's best for you to tackle initially. What's your perspective on the idea of creating community gardens and other direct food growing methods at food pantry sites and CAP agencies across the state? And I think there's some broader questions about how people can be helpful in general at this time of year.
I think it's a wonderful idea. Anytime you can put your hands in the soil and understand what creation is and understanding healthy food options, that's one of the hallmarks of the food bank, not just getting food out, but healthy, nutritious food. And when you can get communities involved, it gets a sense of being and support. That's the hallmark of what our member agencies do. We're getting out millions of pounds of food. Is it millions at this point, Andrew? I mean, it takes a village and a community to be able to do that. So if you can make sustainable gardens, have places where people can go, be part of community, it's a great thing. We've been part of a food as medicine model that happens in the Commonwealth and some of our sister states. So we run at EPCAPA, a Fairly Qualified Health Center. And we'd love to get to a point where we could have a garden on our roof like some of the other community centers do in other agencies, where physicians prescribe food the same way they do medications. And so again, that's part of the work that could be part of the solution. I think we can all be a part of that. But at this time, the needs are great. When I say that we're doing 40% more services to people, we're not doing with 40% more volunteers. So our staff is taking a lot more tonnage, a lot more food that are coming through the doors to make sure the needs are there. But we're hoping we'll get back to pre-pandemic where the volunteers are also meeting the needs that we drastically lead beyond just the holiday season. So we don't expect those numbers to go down anytime soon, but pantries across the state could also utilize volunteers coming back to our spaces as well.
Thank you. And Roland, I know you and the other CAP agencies also deal a lot with folks who need heating assistance at this time of year. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit to those challenges and what you're seeing now as sort of an additional stressor on a lot of the families.
'Tis the season. So again, we are looking at things, and we try to look at them in families in Rhode Island as holistically. So again, the need for heating assistance through our LIHEAP program, all the CAP agencies are running those programs. You can go to any of our organizations to be able to get assistance. The Good Neighbor Energy Fund is actually working. All of us are using some of our energy bills to help support that kind of work. And we don't want to have people competing against their needs. So again, Senator Cano talked about it again. Is it the difference between gas in your car to get to work that pays for the rent or the food? So again, a lot of times people will sacrifice the food because you need the job, you need the gas to be able to get to your appointments. And so they're coming to our pantries. And one of the things I'll just say very quickly is it's people at every level, as Andrew talked about in the report. Some of our biggest donors are now utilizing our services. They're folks that have had people that have passed on from COVID or lost jobs. So last year they were giving and donating to our agencies, and this year they're in those pantry lines needing support and assistance. And that's what we're here for, to do it with no shame, to make sure it's done in a dignified way. But when Rhode Islanders need us, our food pantry network is there. When they need all of those tangential wraparound things, CAP associations and CAP agencies like mine are here to serve.
Thank you. Andrew, I wonder if you can field this one. It's challenging. How can the food bank expand its availability to people no matter income? What can we do given the challenges?
So the food bank's services are available to anyone who's struggling to feed their family. Anyone can call the United Way 211 and get referred to a food pantry or meal site in your community and get help. You're not going to be questioned about your income. You're not going to be questioned about why you're in this situation. We just help. And people end up in the situation where they need food assistance, sometimes because of an emergency, a family emergency that leaves them without the ability to do anything else but get help from one of our wonderful member agencies. When they go there, if you go to a community action program, like Rowan was saying, it's a holistic approach. People are going to try to understand what's going on in your family, in your household, and make sure that you're getting the help that you need, whether it's healthcare, whether it's LIHEAP, whether heating assistance. There are resources for families that are in crisis, and we really want families that need the help to get the help.
Great. And I think another thing people can do, there's a question about if you don't have disposable income to donate, what can you do? We can put our volunteer page in the chat as well. We have limited opportunities here at the food bank, but many of our partner agencies have asked us to list opportunities at the food pantries, and they really need the help right now. So take a look at that. And I want to thank Megan Tucker from the Heart Association has given us another fact sheet that I'm just dropping into the chat right now. All right, so circling back to school meals and funding for just a moment. There's a comment about how the Annenberg Institute at Brown recently released a report last spring that Rhode Island still has millions of dollars in ESSER funds, which I'm taking as some kind of COVID emergency funds. And can they be used to kick this off or fund it for even a year? And I think Senator Cano, maybe you can take the first stab at that, and then Rep. Caldwell, just to talk about sort of the pros and cons of one-time funding like that.
So thank you. Yes, there is a lot of priorities for the use of these one-time benefits that we have after COVID. One of the concerns as a member of the Finance Committee that I hear my colleagues speak every single time is sustainability. We don't want to get to a point where we just put money into a alleviate for 1 year a program and then cut up the expectations, just like we just seen happen with the federal dollars expire for school meals. So we want to have a solution that is sustainable. We want to make sure that we do, our best to have a line item in the budget, just like Rep. Caldwell said. Yes, there is ESSER dollars. Yes, they could be allocated for it. But again, there is a lot of competing priorities. There is housing needs. There is, we have homeless families. There is a lot of different priorities that are at the table. And that is what the Finance Committee faced a lot of difficulty in deciding. And then, so I do know that the General Assembly as a whole have taken in consideration just doing these investments that could be sustainable, because like that, the community will benefit more or less long-lasting benefits for Rhode Islanders. But I'm not saying that this wouldn't be a good use. I think it could be. It's just that I know the concern is sustainability. And Red Cowell, you can add into that.
Yes, I would agree. It's always sustainability. And my understanding is also the ESSER funds have to be used by community in some circumstances, not all. And so, we'd have to see if East Greenwich wanted the same things that Pawtucket wanted. And of course, all the communities are weighing different options. But I want to just again kind of harp on that sustainability. One of these ideas that were floated when I brought this bill up was let's do a pilot somewhere. And we already have a pilot. We had it free during COVID. We know people are going to use it. We know people want it for more than next year, right? We don't want to be putting into place where, okay, we're doing this kind of off and on every other year. That's not something families can plan for. That doesn't help them in their financial planning. It doesn't help them, with all of the different things they're struggling with that Rilwan and the senator have mentioned.
Okay. Andrew, do you want to give us any final words for the bill and the report and the season, all of the above?
Yeah, well, first of all, just thank you, Lisa. Thank you to our guest speakers, Rilwan, Senator Kano, Representative Caldwell, so much for being with us this morning. And, as I said before, the status report is a call to action. We must do more to reduce food insecurity and to protect children from hunger. And we're calling on our Congress. As difficult as things are in DC, this is the moment where we can use the Farm Bill to increase SNAP benefits and bring back the expanded child tax credit. At the state level, as you've heard us say over and over, this is the moment for us to make school meals free for all students. And if you want to help us, go to the Food Bank's website, rifoodbank.org, click on Advocate for Change. You can make a difference. Thanks to everyone for being here with us this morning. We really appreciate your attendance, your interest in the issue, and all your support. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.